quite like a hot cup of bleach. Welcome back to the new show. I'm Random Rob, and I've got a fun one for you today. What do you get when you mix The Thing with Murder on the Orient Express? Horror Express, of course, from 1972. The film was directed by Spanish film director Eugenio Martin. It was produced by Bernard Gordon. The two of them had earlier collaborated on the film Pancho Villa, starring Telly Savalas. The film was a co-production between Granada Films in Spain and Benmar Productions in the UK. It was shot in Madrid between 1971 and 1972. It stars Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Telly Savalas in a really wacky cameo. To briefly recap the plot, in 1906, Dr. Alexander Saxton discovers the 2-million-year-old remains of a proto-human in a frozen cave in Manchuria. While transporting the fossilized remains across Siberia by train, he meets up with his associate, Dr. Wells. Before the crate can be loaded onto the train in Peking or Shanghai, depending which signs you're looking at in the train station scene, there's lots of geographical errors in this movie. A Chinese pickpocket attempts to open the lock to the crate to see what's inside. Moments later, the pickpocket is discovered dead on the ground, and his eyes have turned white. A local priest, Father Pujardov, starts ranting that whatever is in this crate is the product of the devil. After some hubbub with the local authorities, the crate is loaded onto the train, and our heroes begin their journey across Siberia. Saxton is very paranoid about anyone finding out what his discovery is, even his best friend, Dr. Wells. So Wells bribes the baggage man to sneak a peek inside later that evening. As the baggage man begins removing nails from the crate, we realize that the frozen creature has thawed out and is alive. And, in a bit of foreshadowing, we see the creature's hand reach outside the crate, take a nail and bend it, and then pick the lock. And this is their first tip, that whatever this creature is, it can absorb the memories and experiences of people through their eyes. Soon the baggage man is found dead, and a Russian detective, Inspector Mirov, played by Julio Pena, questions Dr. Saxton about the contents of the crate, which is now empty. When Dr. Wells autopsies the body of the baggage man, aside from the similar white eyes, he also discovers that the brain of the baggage man is now completely smooth, and Wells theorizes that whatever the creature is, it has drawn off all the memories out of the brain and left it empty, which is why the brain no longer has any folds or wrinkles. Inspector Mirov eventually catches the creature and shoots it, but not before the creature transfers its essence into his body. At the same time, Father Pujardov, witnessing this event, begins to believe that this being is the incarnation of Satan. And despite his earlier warnings about the danger of this satanic creature, now swears loyalty to it. And if you haven't seen this movie, I'm going to stop right there because you really should give it a look. It's this film is a hoot. It's also a quality, low-budget film. Horror Express was made for $300,000, and director Eugenio Martin considered it a real coup that he managed to get Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. The film is loaded with campy and humorous dialogue. Cushing gets a lot of the funniest lines. In one scene where the possessed Inspector Mirov asks Lee and Cushing, "How do I know you're not the monster?" And Cushing's standing there, he's just brought a shotgun into the room, and he looks at him incredulously and says, "We're not monsters. We're British, man." And there's also a sad, sweet little bit of trivia about this film, is that Peter Cushing's wife had died earlier that year. And before they were ready to start, Cushing realized he just wasn't going to be able to do the film. He was too distraught. And he was experiencing night terrors. He would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. And so Christopher Lee, who had worked with him before, went and talked to him and convinced him to stay on. Not only that, their friendship was such, Lee stayed with Cushing the whole time they were shooting. He stayed in his room. He slept in the same bed with him because of the night terrors he was having. That's friendship. And it's a credit to Cushing's acting ability, because you would never notice that he was in such a state. I mean, him and Lee were total professionals. And they both make this film really fun. It was very common at the time for films shot in Spain to be shot silently and dubbed later. Horror Express is completely dubbed, although there are several prominent female characters of different ages. All the women were dubbed by one actress named Olive Gregg. And of course, Cushing, Lee, and Savalas all dubbed their own lines. As I mentioned earlier, Telly Savalas as the Cossack Captain Kazan is one of the strangest cameos. I think there was some alcohol involved, and there was something about his line readings in the scenes that almost reminded me of Vin Diesel. Like, if you were remaking this movie, definitely cast Vin Diesel as Captain Kazan. They only had one train car set to make this film with, which means they had to dress the set for each of the individual train cars and then shoot all the scenes for each of the different cars consecutively. So very likely the actors and actresses probably had no idea what was going on in this movie until they saw it cut together. I also think, despite the budgetary limitations of the film and not being able to do complex special effects, the sequences where the alien is zapping people with its eye beams are still pretty effective, especially in the sequence when the alien that has finally possessed Father Pajardov wipes out a squad of Cossack soldiers. The action really goes off the rails near the very end of this film. This is such an entertaining movie, and God, could it use a remake. There's so much you could do with this story if you made it today. Although I'm not sure I can think of two actors you could put together that would have better horror film chemistry than Lee and Cushing. And I had mentioned in a post on Patreon that this was a Hammer film, and I have to apologize because Horror Express is not a Hammer film. Maybe not technically, but it nonetheless has everything that a Hammer film would have. Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, body-swapping, brain-sucking, alien, period piece, and crazy Cossacks on a runaway train. What's not to love? I also discovered when I was researching the film that Horror Express is a public domain film. So if I can find a way to put it up online without getting my channel shut down, I may see if I can upload a copy of it. So what are some of your favorite low-budget exploitation horror films from the early 70s? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked what you heard, press the like button and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron of the new show. Alright, that's all for this time. This is Random Rob signing off. Bye-bye.